President Trump's reciprocal tariffs set to go into effect Wednesday, April 9th, would bring import taxes to the highest level for the U.S. since 1930. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, enacted by President Herbert Hoover in 1930, came months into the Great Depression. Designed to protect American farmers and manufacturers, these tariffs instead kicked off retaliation from U.S. trade partners, bringing global trade to a standstill. The tariffs were renegotiated under President Franklin Roosevelt in 1934. So far, multiple nations have expressed a desire to negotiate with the U.S. on these tariffs. And according to our next guest, tariffs don't necessarily mean tough economic times ahead. Joining us now, Greg Itt, the Wall Street Journal's chief economic commentator. Greg, great to speak with you here. Talk to me about your reporting in terms of, I feel like the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act has never been more popular, at least for my generation. How is that different than the tariffs we're seeing right now in terms of it potentially being an economic indicator of a slowdown to come?
Yeah, and Madison, if you haven't seen the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I recommend that you do go see it. And then you would actually be able to answer the question, what is the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act? For any historian who has looked at the Great Depression, they know that this was a dramatic increase in tariffs passed by the Congress, signed into law by Herbert Hoover in 1930. They know what came after that. There was a collapse in worldwide trade as other countries retaliated, and the United States and the world slid into depression. So pretty grim kind of template for the present, right? In fact, little known fact, Trump's tariffs are actually much higher than the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. But but the point I want to make here is it doesn't necessarily mean we have to repeat the 1930s. So it all depends on what comes after. The reason other countries retaliated in the 1930s was because the U.S. was dug in on these tariffs and the entire atmosphere of cooperation disintegrated. If instead we have negotiations and a sense that we can actually dial them back, I think the outcome will also be different.
Greg, this is Nancy Tangler. I feel like all my economic education has come from reading you in the Wall Street Journal. So thanks for all your years of great reporting and editorializing. But I did want to ask you, so maybe this is one of the things that comes after, but we're already hearing the administration float some help for farmers and also a potential export tax credit where you get your money, your penalties back at the end of the year if you're a manufacturer. What do you make of that? Do you think those are real policy proposals, and do you think that is one of the things that comes after that may make this more palatable?
Those are things, I think you have to frame those as the administration shoring up their base. They're very worried that Republicans and traditional Republican constituencies like farmers and so on will start to turn against the tariffs, put pressure on their own senators and congressmen to turn against the tariffs. These steps might help politically, but they will have almost no effect economically. That's because the scale of these tariffs is so enormous. I mean, we're talking about $500 billion a year in added fees, primarily borne by Americans. And that dollar number, Nancy, doesn't do justice to how distorting and damaging they are to the overall structure of the American economy, which has built supply chains and relationships for years around the assumption that the United States would be importing a lot of these products. So you can't simply say, oh, well, we're going to raise tariffs by $1, but we'll cut income taxes by $1 and it will all be good. No, it won't be like that.
So, Greg, where does that leave us in terms of especially the Trump administration's talking points about the positive impact of these tariffs on things like the job market, bringing back manufacturing jobs? What economic impact could that shift potentially have?
So I think it is definitely the case that you will get some jobs created in the United States to make the products that we're no longer importing. I would be shocked if that didn't happen. I think the question is, will the overall economy be healthier as a result of it? Certainly, most economists don't think so. But one of the reasons nobody wants to basically plant a flag and say with a great conviction that the economy will be great or will be terrible is because we're still trying to figure out what Trump's end game is here. Does he really intend like these 20 percentage point higher tariffs to be permanent forever? Mm-hmm. That's a very negative outlook. Mm-hmm. Or does he really intend this to be a starting point to negotiate? Like, talk to me, Japan, talk to me, Israel, talk to me, Mexico, Canada, Europe, and we'll come to some agreement that lowers these tariffs. It's a very different outcome. And that's why I return to my original point. If these tariffs result in negotiation, then that's a generally benign outcome. Mm-hmm. If they result in just retaliation after retaliation, that's a very malign outcome.